If you haven't needed one yet, chances are you will at some point. What's up, everyone? Paul from GPF, and thanks for joining us for another episode of Light Bars and Lockers. Today, we are talking about winches. So let's do it. Let's bring in the guys. Let's get into it. Let's talk about winches. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Light Bars and Lockers. Thanks, as always, for joining us. Today, we've got, of course, Ryan Stuangi from Combat Off-Road and Tim Rogers from TMR Customs. And today, we are talking about winches. What's going on, guys? How's things?
We're awesome. Got a couple of new employees here at the shop that were getting their feet wet and throwing them right into the fire. So, yeah, exciting times and looking forward to a good fall season. I think it's going to be fun.
Nice. That's awesome. Cool. Right on. Ryan, what's going on, bud?
Man, just enjoying the internet.
Yeah. Nice. I love it. Modern conveniences and all. You'd think today here on the show, it's actually for... I don't know about Ryan, but for Tim and I, or right about today, tomorrow, kids are going back to school, so you'd think there'd be less internet activity. I guess that's not the case. I guess, you know what, maybe everyone's at home with the kids gone and they're just binge watching stuff.
Watching the dirty show.
Flexing it up, right? That's right. All the stuff they couldn't watch because their kids have been around every single day for the last 10 months. Making up for lost time.
I gotta wait till the 16th.
That's crazy. Yeah, they just keep pushing it out. So... Tim, you mentioned you had two new employees. I assume one's solo jeeper.
Yeah. Todd. If you follow us on Instagram or Facebook, or you follow the group, Todd Folks, he goes by Solo Jeeper. Yeah, he's joined us. He's working in our warehouse, so he's having fun picking and packing parts and doing lots of pre-assembling too of parts we manufacture. So yeah, he'll have his hands all over your stuff, and he's total Jeep nut and enthusiast. So yeah, I mean we're passionate about the stuff we make, and we like to see that like right through our whole staff here. So it's pretty cool. Everyone enjoys manufacturing parts for you guys.
Nice, that's awesome. Right on. Cool. Oh, I saw the schematic for that. It was for the double shock mount. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. I saw this yesterday. Why don't we talk about that for a sec? Because that was pretty cool.
Sure, yeah. So that's like a dual shock mount we make. So it's laser cut, CNC form. And it's not basically, the reason we developed it is to hold a coilover shock and a bypass shock. So you'd most typically see these on like a tube chassis build or a tube car. Some guys will use these on Jeeps. Like if you've got a Jeep that like you've say back half or front half and you've mostly built a tube structure around the existing frame, you might be able to incorporate these. So yeah, you won't typically see them used. Like we made a joke. I mean, they're designed like kind of for like a race application or high-end application where you would use a coilover shock and a bypass shock. We joked you could shove two rough countries in there if you really want to. I mean, we'd have some good laughs at your expense, but yeah, that's a mount we developed basically out of racing and out of necessity and for our own needs. We wanted to change like the ride height of our chassis, so that's a new mount. And like most of the stuff we make, it's universal. So again, our customers are creative and they can find pretty cool ways to apply to darn near anything.
Awesome, right on. And Ryan, I saw that you took your JK bumper, or sorry, your JL bumper off and threw it on the Gladiator. How was that? Like no issues compatibility wise?
No, just the OE Rubicon skid plate. I just had to notch it just to get the light bezels for the fog lights in. But I took it off because we're going to put Tim's bumper on the big machine, the big JL there. So I figured, why throw away a good bumper for now when I can just put it over there and see how it does. Yeah, so that's it. It was too wide for us. It'll be all right for the other one. So Tim's is a lot sleeker that way, and it'll be good for tire interference. And it's probably thicker, I'd imagine. So we're going to be a little tougher on the JL than the Gladiator. So I was going to put the tougher stuff on the big machine and then leave the half street Home Depot machine with the other bumper.
Nice, right on. I gotta tell you, I heard they actually that the color that you got, they discontinued it, so you're gonna have a rare color, if you will. Yeah, it looks awesome with
sought after collector's item.
I guess that's right. Yeah, I saw that 2021. They're no longer making that color, so I could be wrong. I'll have to fact check that, but I'm pretty sure that's what I read. So. Very cool. Well, let's get into this, considering we were talking about bumpers a little bit. Today's topic being winches. Let's talk about fundamentals. So I'm sure 99.9 of every single person that's watching this knows what a winch is, how it works, why you need one, etc. But for that 0.01%, let's maybe just quickly talk about, what a winch is and why you need it. I mean, at its top sort of basic levels. Tim, you want to take a crack at that one?
Yeah, for sure. Essentially, it's just a self-recovery tool that's going to be mounted on your Jeep, truck, whatever you've got. So say you get stuck, say you're out by yourself, you can use that to self-recover. You can use that to recover others. But oftentimes it's used when you're stuck. Maybe a buddy's tried pulling you out with a recovery strap 2 or 3 times, and a recovery strap's just not getting the job done. Whereas a winch is an actual like mechanical device going to be bolted to your bumper or frame rails, and you're going to hook that to a tree, a rock, another device, and mechanically use that winch to pull you out through its motor and its gear train and its mechanical advantage.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Got it. Ryan, when it comes to picking the right size of winch, is there some sort of like calculation we need to consider, or especially considering we know most people are going to have a Jeep? Obviously, it'll be anywhere from a 2-door TJ to a 4-door JL. But is there anything we need to take into consideration to get the right size?
There's probably someone has a fancy math calculation, but basically, rule of thumb is any kind of passenger vehicle, you don't want to go under like an 8,000-pound winch, So anywhere from 8,000 to 9,500 is plenty for, for a Jeep, 4-door, 2-door, any range of Jeep, CJ to brand new JL. After that, if you're in a pickup trucks and stuff, usually I don't put anything less than 95 for sure, and you go all the way up to like 15.5, depending on if you got a 3/4 ton truck or something like that. So that would be where I'd get specific for really just figuring out kind of rule of thumb. So like there's a lot of people that see some bargains on some 6,000-pound winches or some 4,500-pound winches and just think because their vehicle maybe weighs 4,500 pounds that they could stick that winch on, where that's not the case. That's more like an ATV size winch or a side-by-side. That's kind of where those kind of foul. I can see where you would draw the conclusion and say, oh, my truck's 45, I have a 4,500-pound winch, should be just fine. But, you got to remember all that. You're stuck in something, right? You're not pulling that vehicle on flat ground with no friction or no any kind of challenges, right? So you got to figure at least 8,000 pounds. So if you remember that, and then we can get into brands and stuff. But 8,000 to 9,500 for Jeeps is your goal. Anything above that, it's extra weight for nothing. You probably don't need it. They become bigger at that stage too, right? The drums are bigger, the motors are bigger, they're heavier. I wouldn't do it. I would just keep it to those in that range.
Okay, cool. That makes sense. And actually just sort of keeping that in mind, Tim, if we're talking about a 9,000-pound winch, that's like 9,000 pounds. It doesn't continuously pull 9,000 pounds. Is that correct? As it sort of spools, it reduces the amount of weight?
Yeah, so basically the less cable you have on there, that's when it's rated for that 9. So, I mean, if you're stuck from me and you're only 20 feet away, but I got to winch you out or I got to pull me into you, if we've only got 25 feet of cable out, we're not seeing that full 9. You can look at all the charts from all the different manufacturers, but yeah, that's a good point. That's like at its full distance. And then we can get into other devices which will allow you to add a mechanical advantage to that winch. So you can use a snatch block, and now we're just into basic pulley systems and some simple math. I mean, they can effectively double your pulling power, which is awesome in a situation where you're really stuck. The drawback, though, is it cuts your speed in half. So say you were stuck in a situation, you needed to get out quick. No, you don't want to use a snatch block. Oftentimes that doesn't happen when you're just recreation wheeling. So if you have the opportunity to use one, it's not a bad idea because it's lessening the load on your winch. And you got to remember, your winch is like any other mechanical device. If you overwork it, you're going to exceed its limits and it can fail. So you just want to be respectful of that.
Okay, fair enough. And sorry, just I guess as a sidebar, maybe just explain the snatch block a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. If anyone does a Google search for snatch block, I think it'll mostly pull up winch stuff, but you might get some side goodies there. I mean, be forewarned.
Steel underwear picture.
Yeah, you're top of the word snatch Google. I mean, be forewarned, but it's essentially a pulley, and it's going to open up and allow you to pass your cable around the pulley or the large wheel, and then from there you can use a strap, generally a tree saver, and you can attach that snatch block to, say, a tree, run your winch rope out to it, go around the pulley, and bring that winch rope or cable back to your Jeep. So basically the winch line's running out to the tree, around the pulley, back to the Jeep. Now you've doubled the pulling power of that winch. Like I said, you cut its speed in half, but I mean, if we're just stuck in mud and nothing's dire straits, we lessen the workload on that winch by half. So I mean, that's a sweet option too. So that's in its basic form. If you search them, you'll see all kinds of different ones. Obviously, any of the big recovery brands are going to have those. And that's something you want to make sure, again, you're buying the right size for the winch. Because like Ryan said, if you are attracted to that 4,000 or 5,000 pound one for a side-by-side, it's not going to do the job pulling your Jeep or truck out. So again, with all this stuff, you want to make sure it's sized appropriate for your own gear and your own vehicle.
Okay, right on. Perfect. Ryan, then maybe let's talk about the difference between electric versus hydraulic. If we've come to the conclusion that we basically want anywhere from 8,000 to 9,500, so we've got the rough, size down. But now, how do we pick between a hydraulic versus electric?
Well, you're gonna have basically just have or electric winches for the Jeeps and stuff, because you need like a power takeoff or something more industrial for like a hydraulic winch, or really really old stuff. When Jeeps came and they were like backhoes and farm tractors and all that stuff, where they have the ability to drive a hydraulic pump. Like you need something mechanical, like off the transfer case, to pump that and use that fluid mechanics, like to use the winch. They're super cool, just no one has that stuff anymore on the new stuff, right? So you just be all electric, unless I'm missing something, but that's
no, so cool. Okay, so that makes sense. So for the and most people in the Jeep community, pulling a Jeep with that size winch, there's no point in even looking at hydraulic. They're just all electric when you're checking them out online. Yeah. Okay.
Unless you got like a mid 40s, CJ, that has that transfer case with that PTO, that power takeoff output, where you'd hook that winch to, or you're a big industry guy, you know what I mean? But yeah, not for recreation, just electric, way you go.
Okay, fair enough. So then, what about things like suspension, Tim? Is there anything we have to consider with that? And the reason I ask that in particular is, I know a guy who he got this big heavy bumper, and he threw a winch up there, and now his Jeep sits like this, like it's got a very pronounced forward rake. So he wants to throw on some spacers to kind of level it out. Is that something we need to sort of take into consideration, especially if you're just throwing on like a stock? I imagine most people won't, but
no, I've never made any adjustments for it. Lots of my customers do think that they put like a bumper and a winch on, so they might want to stuff a coil spring spacer in there. One of my friends that's a customer, he was funny. I remember he had a bumper, he put that on, he put a spacer in there to adjust for that bumper, then he put a winch on. He wanted like a 1/4 inch spacer, and I was like, do you even know what a 1/4 inch looks like? So I showed him a tape, and I'm like, watch, like look at a 1/4 inch. I'm like, I'm gonna stand on your Jeep. So I stood on your Jeep. I'm like, do you think it's lower? He's like, no. I'm like, the fucking winch ain't gonna lower it either. So I mean, if you're super picky and anal and your Jeep got to dial it in for sure. A lot of people will buy coil spring spacers to accommodate or try and level that shit. I think it's kind of funny, but yeah, to each their own. I mean, when you're shopping for springs or a lift kit, if you're putting like a big heavy bumper, a winch, and the rear swing of a tire carrier, like a lot of companies now will offer different spring rates to accommodate for that. So you might want to make the decision at that point. But if you've already got a lifted Jeep, I would not skip on putting a winch on it because you're worried it's going to lower the front by a 1/4 inch. Like that's silly in my opinion. I mean, I wouldn't go that.
Yeah. No, fair enough. No, I swear this guy's he definitely needs to get looked at, because first of all, his bumper that he put on it took 2 people to lift it up there. It must have weighed 300 pounds, and then he's got this giant winch on there. I swear his Jeep sits like this. It's hilarious. Like you're driving it, you're like leaning forward.
He's probably got a
fantastic
instead of a coil spring problem.
What's that? Sorry? He's
probably got a bumper problem instead of a coil spring problem.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. He's a DIY guy too, so I'm not sure what he has going on in there. So when buying a winch, Ryan, is there anything we need to take into consideration? Things that we would want to have as like remote controls, or making sure that we're able to properly connect it to perhaps like an aux switch in the dashboard?
I would be more concerned with like how often do you think you're going to use it, like just speculating, and then go quality, you know what I mean? Like Warren's my favorite winch company. I do use other winches, and I have other winches, and I had too many problems with other winches, but I mean, maybe I wasn't really using them to their full capacity or really killing them. So you got to figure out what works for you, right? Like it's nice to get like I got an XD 9000i, like the thermometric winch on the one Jeep, so you could like pound it and like it'll cool, and like you can really use it. Like the duty cycle's nice, the time is nice, like the reel in time's good, but then I got like a Bulldog winch from friend of mine that owns Bulldog Winches. He's like, try it. And he stuck it on a King of Hammers truck, and they did all right and all that fun stuff. I've used it. It seems good to me. Like, it's a little slower and everything, but it never let me down. But so it's kind of you got to kind of figure out what you're going to do with it. And it is nice to have the auxiliary remote instead of the cable, because if you get stuck or something, you forgot to connect that cable before you start it, you got to jump out of your Jeep and crawl over it or jump in the mud or whatever to hook that up. You know, it's nice to have the remote. And they're not crazy over the top expensive, you know what I mean? So, I mean, the winch is going to be a few bucks, but for the serious off-brand ones, stay with the Harbor Freight specials and stuff, I would stay away from those. But something that has a warranty, you know, but I mean, if I could choose, I would just choose a warrant all day. I wouldn't pick a different winch, to be honest.
Okay.
You know, like if I'm spending my money for sure and I need it, I would do that route. But I do like to test other products so I can give like an account to them, right? Like I have a Rugged Ridge winch that they wanted us to test, and then I've used it maybe 7 or 8 times. It's done just fine, you know what I mean? But it's hit and miss. It's just terrible when you get something and you're in that spot and you need it that one time and it doesn't work that one time, or it only works one time. You know, I mean, what's that worth to you? You're saving $200. Is it worth being stuck in the bush because you're the only guy with a winch and you overloaded it? Or, you know, not to me. You know, I'd rather just get something that I know at least is good, or at least I tried it and was like, okay. And I only try these things when I got other friends or people with me that have a winch in case the shit hits the fan. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And Tim, actually, I was going to ask you the same question, if you had a preference and how perhaps, because I know with Smitty Build or the Rugged Ridge in particular, you do save a couple bucks over the Warren, but is it worth it?
I've never ran one of those winches, so I can't speak too much to the quality of them. I can say I've always ran Warren winches. When I got my first TJ, literally was the first modification I did. I bought a winch plate and a winch because I always figured no matter what I do with this Jeep in terms of building it up, you can always get stuck and get fucked on the trail. And it's nice to be able to recover yourself when someone else's Jeep can't help you out. And I did all kinds of crazy, like stupid shit with that. I had a landscaping job. My boss would pay me to pull bushes out. His wife ran over someone's like fence one time with her snowplow. Like we fixed it. So I mean, they're kind of a rad utility tool, and I mean you can use it for more than just your self-recovery of your Jeep. But the only brand I've ever bought is Warren. It's never let me down. My uncle had like an 8274 that was over like 30 years old, and it was just beat and ragged on a CJ, but the thing always worked when you need it to work. And generally, if you're wheeling and you're in a situation where you do need to winch yourself out, shit's probably pretty bad and you're stuck. Shit's bad. You need, that's the one piece of equipment, like, you need to work right now. Like, it's got one job and I want it to function. So, like, I would not be too confident hopping out and hooking up a winch that came from Princess Auto, Harbor Freight. That was like a discount brand that you didn't have any faith in. I know there was one guy here in Ontario that had his kind of own private label winches he'd import from offshore. I'm not going to name the name, but they were notorious for, like, you'd plug in, you go to activate the thing and it would just arc out, like literally sparks coming out of the winch. And then I was like, what's the point? What is the point in that? Like, literally at that point, the winch is a fashion accessory. You're running around town and you look like you got a built Jeep and I got a winch on it. But like, fuck, when you're stuck, that thing didn't do shit. So I remember like multiple people I had recovered that had that brand of winch. I don't think the guy sells them anymore. I think he popped smoke, but yeah, they were junk. So for me, I've always been buy a Warren winch. Yes, you pay more, but I believe you get far more for it, and you're buying reliability, and you need it to work.
So good to know. Okay, so and it's true, right? I mean, at the end of the day, for the extra couple $100, because look, you know, we put a new bumper on the JL last week. We're testing out for a customer or whatever you want to call it, a brand. It seems pretty awesome, to be honest. It's aluminum. It's light as hell. But you know, now I'm in the process of saying, okay, so what winch do we want to go with and test and all that fun stuff. And yeah, you're right. For the extra couple $100, when you need it, you know, could you imagine? I mean, I'm sure you've been there, where it's like, fuck, like $200, you know, it's probably gone. That amount of savings would be gone the day that you can't use it.
Well, and I mean,
just in track, man.
Once it's fucked and it fails, like, to me, it's done. So you're gonna end up buying the Warren in the end,
Right.
Quite possibly. So yeah, just buy once, cry once, get yourself a quality winch. You're certainly not gonna regret buying a good piece.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I was gonna say that's the saying, right? Buy once, cry once. In terms of sizing, are they generally, Ryan? Are they generally like a one size fits all? Like you just go out, buy it, and it's just gonna basically work with the bumper, whether you have factory to factory, steel or what have you. With the new JLs, they have a pretty cool winch plate built in. But do you have to consider sizing, or is it just they're all kind of one size fits all?
Well, the general footprint of the bolt patterns, most of them are the same. The 8274, I believe, the different one, and there might be the odd one that's different. If you went off the path and tried to like retrofit an industrial winch on there, you're gonna run into some challenges. But most of that footprint's pretty standard. I know on like the normal size winches, like 8000 and 9500, they fit on that standard pattern. And then I believe that 10S, which is a really cool winch, but when it came out, before anybody adjusted to it, I know that the footprint was good, but the winch was so big that it didn't fit all platforms. Like bumper wise, you have to like modify the bumper a little bit. Great winch. I had real good luck with it forever. Had it on one of our other two doors a long time ago, but yeah, that's the only thing that comes to mind. I think most of them are pretty standard. The 8274 and maybe the 10S, the pattern's the same, but it's a little wider. That's kind of the thing that jumps out at me that way.
Okay. All right, cool. And what about maintenance? I think especially being here in the Northeast, in the winters in particular, you see people have the winch covers. Tim, is that something we need, or is that?
I'm hit or miss on those. When I had my first Warren, it was an XD 8000i on a TJ. I bought their cover, and it was basically like a vinyl bag with two bungees you'd strap under it. I thought that'd be a good idea to have on there to keep stuff off, but I found when you open it up, it trapped more shit underneath, and it was always wet. It was kind of like the same as like if you tarp a vehicle and it's not sealed. I mean, it's wet from within. So I found that cover not to be the greatest. There's a lot of newer, like better fitting neoprene ones out there. Yeah, I had one of those on a Warren power plant. It's like a big tall winch. Warren doesn't make them anymore, but they're badass because they had a built-in air compressor, and the compressor was powered off the winch motors. Like that thing hauled ass for filling tires and whatnot. I've still got that winch on one of my TJs, but it had a neoprene cover. I liked that for running in the summer because it basically kept the sun off your winch rope because the UV will degrade your winch rope. But in terms of winter, my advice would be just frequently wash the thing. It's like anything else, if you can keep it clean and keep the salt and elements off that, I think that's the best treatment you can give it. I'm not, like I said, a huge fan of the covers because I feel they can trap more stuff underneath the cover. So if you got one, make sure periodically take it off and still wash underneath it because they're not sealed. There's going to be contaminants underneath the cover for sure.
Okay, right on. Ryan, any tips or tricks to help with the longevity and make sure that it's, it stays relatively protected in our crazy environment?
Well, like Tim said, it's good to have the UV off it. We have a neoprene cover on the one winch for sure. And keeping stuff clean is kind of general rule of thumb. Wash off the gunk. If you're going to go and you submerge the winch and stuff like that, you probably want to get your hands dirty and invest that whole time. Take the bumper, take the winch off, take the motor off. See if you got water in there because they're not really watertight. And then over time, if you've had it for a while, those seals are going to break down too. You know what I mean? You probably want to take it apart, re-grease everything, seal it back up. That's where a lot of winches fail. They just get corroded on the inside, right? And then people like, my winch doesn't move anymore. All the connectors, the dielectric grease, everything, it's good when it's new, but like I said, over time, all that stuff breaks down. So if you want to keep it nice, you're going to have to learn how to maintain that stuff. Or if you really wanted to pay someone to do that service, that won't be very cost effective. So take some pictures, take it apart, grease it, put it back together, look at your pictures. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. No, that's great. I guess that brings us to the idea of the material also. Tim, we're talking like steel versus the synthetic ropes. What are some pros and cons, and will that sort of come into play when we talk about environmental issues and what have you. I assume if we've got, steel.
Yeah, a steel cable is going to be more durable. I mean, if it's going to abrade and rub against a tree or rock or whatever when you're doing recovery, a steel cable is going to hold up better there. Ropes, lighter, it's safer, it doesn't build up burrs, so like you're less likely to damage or cut your hand on it when handling it. Ropes, for the most part, better all around as long as you can protect from that abrasion. But like we mentioned, UV can break your rope down, so that's something you want to watch out for. Whereas a steel cable, like you mentioned, can rust. So I had steel cable on my first winch, and before winter, I would totally spool the thing out, spray it down in WD-40 or Crown or like a rust protectant, and spool it in. And like Ryan's saying, a lot of winches fail from lack of use and corroding inside. So even if you're not using your winch a lot, like if you don't get stuck and need to do a lot of self-recovery, it's not a bad idea to cycle that thing every once in a while and make sure everything is still moving freely. So yeah, in terms of preventing rust, if you have a steel cable, 100% it's going to rust if it's exposed to salt, like in the Northeast. But pull that thing out before the weather gets bad, spray it down in some rust inhibitor, and then reel it in and just try and keep it clean through the winter. A rope would hold up better in that instance, but over time the UV will damage your rope.
Okay, cool. That makes a lot of sense. Ryan, do you have a preference between the two, the steel versus the rope?
Well, yeah, I mean, steel is more industrialist, you know what I mean? They all have their pros and cons. But yeah, I'd say there's more pros for the rope. And even if you just took it right out of safety, I would run a rope. If the rope breaks, it doesn't accelerate and cut people's hands and faces off. Yeah. Right? Not like the steel cable would, right? So just right then and there, we run the rope, Sometimes if I get a winch with a steel cable, I'll run it for a bit and then decide to change it. But, it does get kinked if you're in a hurry and you don't set the winch back properly. And like Tim said, if you did get salt in there, like sometimes the salt just creeps in and eats the rope, like not the rope, the steel cable from the inside out too, right? So it's, there's all just a bunch of little steel like wires wrapped together, right? So if it's only at like 70% or something, you can't see it. Still, like a fail point is dangerous, right? But there's ways to still use steel cable and be safe. It's just if I had to pick, I would just run the rope.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, perfect. So I think what we said so far, just to sort of sum up, is for most people, obviously not for everyone, but for most people probably watching this podcast who have a Jeep, 8,000, 9,500 pounds is probably big enough. Spend the extra couple bucks and get the Warren. It's gonna be the most reliable, at least in terms of what anecdotally we've tested, and probably makes most sense to go with the rope at least from a safety standpoint versus the steel cable. We discussed earlier that maybe we'll do an entire show out in the field on how to properly use it. But Ryan, do you have any tips? Just to tell people to sort of keep into mind and consideration when they start using their winch.
Oh, there's quite a few things I would say. It really depends on where you want to start. Basically, you could talk about it and show it, but at the very least, make sure everyone's out of the way of the cable when you're pulling it. If it's a steel cable, make sure you put something on to dead weight the cable. You can get fancy weighted bags, or you can just use somebody's jacket, whatever. Just make sure something will dead fall out if it decides to let go. And there's all kinds of safe practices for like hooking up, you know what I mean? And like angles, and like we're talking snatch blocks, and, a combination of straps and, D-rings, and just, ways to fasten the two vehicles or whatever. It's a pretty loaded question, but I mean, stay out of the way. Make sure something's over the cable if you figured out the rest of the stuff. But like I said, we could talk about quite a few different ways to do that, and then a whole bunch of different scenarios, right? Like if you're pulling someone up a hill, or you're pulling someone back, or you're pulling someone forward, or you got to pull someone over something, or you got to pull someone who's on an angle you can't get head on. Like there's so many situations where you got to get a little creative, but as long as you understand the fundamentals of what you do, take a minute, make sure, look and do those extra precautions, get in the winch, get out of the way, then you should be fine. I mean, obviously the points are good, if someone tries to pull a Jeep out and they got the other Jeep and then they're pulling themselves towards the stuck vehicle instead of like making sure maybe you butted the truck against a rock or a tree, you know, like there's all these little things you kind of see over time, or little tips and tricks, but hard to kind of put them all together and get you really prepared. But I'd say just make sure you're safe, check everything twice if it's real new to you, and then just go slow, you know, give it a couple tries, you know, see if it's working or not. You know, make sure, there's so many. Make sure the guy that's, you know, in the stuck vehicle is helping you, like driving out, if possible, if he's not broken, if he can drive up with you, if you're pulling up, just to give yourself a little less, you know, stress on your vehicle. Yeah, it's just so many things. I don't know.
Okay. Well, how about we say this?
Kind of just got to do it. Yeah.
I was going to say, I think the most important thing then is to make sure you understand how it works and learn as much as you can. As you mentioned, or as we discussed earlier, you know, we'll do a follow-up in the field, and maybe we can do it with some real-world examples. We'll come back and link into the show notes below, so if you're watching this, you know, down the road, hopefully the link will be there and you'll be able to watch how to properly use it from there. But if that's not the case, if you're watching it sort of right now, then make sure you learn how to properly use a winch before you go out and start screwing around. Really, is there anything else, Tim, you can think of that we missed in talking about winches?
If just backing up with what Ryan's saying with techniques, if you check out the brand Factor 55, they make fairleads, hooks, and all sorts of devices to make your winch more effective and safer. They publish a safe winching guide or safe winching techniques. I've always got them at shows. It's a little like trifold, and like it's chock full of wicked info. I'm pretty sure they have a download. So if you searched Factor 55 safe winching techniques, I think you'd be able to locate that. But that's something good for anyone to read through. You're definitely going to, regardless of your skill level, you're going to pick up something new in there that can help you use a winch safely so you don't hurt yourself, damage your vehicle, or anyone else.
Right on. Yeah, that's a good point. As a matter of fact, if we can find it, we'll link it in the show notes below. And as a matter of fact, that brings me back to the question that I had. In terms of like tow point locations, obviously, you know, your bumpers should have those tow points. But, you know, how many times have we seen the YouTube videos where people, you know, connect something to their buddy's bumper and then rip it right off or whatever, right? Maybe we should we just quickly touch on that and just, you know, what are the appropriate places to hook up a winch to on your vehicle?
Obviously, your factory tow points, if you've got them. If you've got aftermarket bumpers, buy something quality with a good D-ring that's properly welded or fastened to it, so you know you can hook to that with confidence. I'm sure everyone's seen it. There's a picture out there of a D-ring that was used for recovery, and it just pulled the bumper open. Like, it looked like a pop can, like literally if you took a pop can and twisted it up. I'm sure we can all speculate that bumper came from the same land as coronavirus. So just buy yourself quality gear. This isn't an area to skimp out on. I mean, your bumper should be more than just a cosmetic piece. If you actually wheel, it's part of your arsenal for recovering yourself or recovering others. So treat it like a tool and buy quality. Okay,
good tip. Ryan, any insider tips or anything you can think of that we missed?
Not really. Like for that, just recovery. Yeah, you don't want to put anything you need that moves. Like, don't put it on your steering or your shocks or your coil springs or even around the axle if you can help it. You know what I mean? You're just creating all that stress. So yeah, you want to have some tow points that are secure, like Tim said. You know, something that's robust enough to hold that load, right? So, and then you want them in the front, and you want them in the back. That's it. You know what I mean? If you can have two, you can get, if you're on angles, you can go to the left or passenger driver, front and rear. That's perfect. If you can only have one, or you can have one in the middle, like a trailer hitch is good too. A lot of bumpers come with a trailer hitch. You get one of those slugs with a D-ring and a pin. You know, that'll hold enough weight too if you need just one in the center, you know. But if you get offset, like left to right, perfect, front and rear. That's really it.
Okay. Good tip. No,
that's they're attached to shit. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, good. Yeah. No, I think that's a good point. Good. Okay. Well, again, anything that we discussed, we'll recap. We'll throw it in the show notes below. We really don't have any questions this week, mainly because any of the questions that came in, I believe answered in terms of most of the questions are about size and brand name, etc. So Guys, what do we have anything going on? Anything spectacular happening? I know it's kind of like the crap time of year for everything. It's in between, the end of summer and the start of fall and getting ready for the holidays and what have you. But anything happening? Tim, you got anything going on over the next week?
Yeah, we got another race coming up in 2 weeks that we got to get ready for, and we're just working on a bunch of new products right now. A lot of it's steering related for JK and JL. We've got like our 2.5 ton systems that we've sold for years, and we're just kind of refining those and coming up with some missing gaps or some holes in the market. Like if you're familiar with that Fox ATS stabilizer or the TS, like the through shaft ones, there hasn't really been a proper way to mount those to a lot of these aftermarket steering systems. So we've kind of got some trick pieces coming together with one of our clamps and just some relocation stuff for steering stabilizers on your Jeep, JK, JL, or Gladiator. So yeah, lots of that's kind of exciting to get going and bring to market, and just get ready for another race, which is always fun.
Okay, amazing. That's awesome. Yeah, that's nice. At least with all the Corona shit happening, you're able to get out there and race, and it's just pretty awesome. So that's cool. Ryan, anything spectacular happening at the shop this week?
We're working on just some different taillight options for the JK and the JL. Just some different, some nobody's really done before us, a little twist on it. So that's what we're kind of getting in there. We're just modeling those now, and other than that, I'm waiting for your tires.
Yeah.
Sure.
Nice.
Wheels are here, and kit's all done, that kind of stuff. Yeah, and then I got something else I'm trying to work on, kind of undercover. We'll see how it goes. I got to make some calls here when we're done with this, and yeah, a little top secret stuff.
Nice. I love it. Top secrets is where it's at. Nice. Okay, cool. All right. Well, as always, guys, I appreciate it. I'm sure people learned a lot. Of course, if you did and you're on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the bell so you're notified of any new and upcoming shows. Join us on our Facebook group. We have a pretty cool rowing group, I would say. It's Light Bars and Lockers on Facebook. Just search for it. You will find us. It's linked up from the GBF page as well, so feel free to jump on it that way. But yeah, I guess until next time, I appreciate both of you guys being here. I know I learned a lot, as always. And yeah, that's it for another episode of Light Bars and Lockers. Thank you both, and we'll see everyone later.